Welcome to our webinar on how to stay well during this difficult time. My name is Kristin Young, and I'm the Director of Clinical Services for Herren Project. I'm also a licensed independent clinical social worker in the state of Massachusetts, so basically a therapist. Before we get started, I want to share a couple of housekeeping things that we got to be aware of going forward. This is a Q&A, so you guys can ask as many questions as you want. But what we're asking you to do is to use the Q&A box down the bottom. You'll see that there's a chat box. There's also a Q&A box. Please use the Q&A box to ask all of your questions. Also, just as an FYI, this is not a confidential meeting by any means. So when you're asking questions, if they're personal questions, you may not want to reveal any information that's identifying to you. So try to stick to just your first name and no information if you're asking questions regarding loved ones. So to start, does anybody have a question that they brought with them today that you want to throw out there? Again, use the Q&A box at the bottom. If you're on a phone or a device, you touch the screen first, and it could be at the top or the bottom, depending on what device you're on. On a computer, if you hover your mouse over the bottom, if it's not there on a bar already, hover your mouse over the bottom and go down to the Q&A box, and you can input it right then and there. Okay, so just to get started, I want to talk a little bit about obviously the coronavirus and a lot of the anxiety that a lot of us are going through regarding it. So I have a lot of clients right now that are reaching out with real heightened levels of anxiety, feeling like the end of the world is coming, things like that. Oh, we just got a question from Rob. Hi, Kristin. Wanted to ask about dealing with anxiety. Been going through it for 10 days now. It's been awful. Yeah. So that's kind of what I'm talking about. Thank you, Rob. Was this where I was going to start with this, because I think most of us are feeling it to some degree. So first of all, I want to talk a little bit about if you're worried about the virus itself. We got to recognize that the media has a spin on things oftentimes, and it's usually the negative spin. So when we're talking about the percentages and the numbers of survival versus death, right? Typically speaking, they're giving us the percentage of death. But when we look at the survival rate for this, it's actually much higher than the chances that we have of becoming very ill and passing from it. So to start, when you're thinking about the virus itself, if your anxiety is getting up regarding your loved ones, try to remind yourself that even for the most vulnerable of us, it still has about a 90% chance of survival. Because when we're thinking 10% of death, that sounds much scarier than 90% of survival. For most of us, we're going to end up okay. So try to give yourself the information from the positive angle instead of the negative angle. It really can help with your mental state. And so the other things that we're dealing with are our lives are just kind of in upheaval, right? We have no idea right now what tomorrow's going to look like, what our world is going to look like. Our routines are completely gone. So to start, if you're having an incredibly high level of anxiety all day long, what I've been telling people to do is try to start meditating. Now, it's really hard in the beginning. If you've never meditated before, it's a very difficult thing to start doing, especially if your anxiety level is high. So you want to start off with a small time frame to start. There's a lot of apps out there that you can use that are very helpful. There's Headspace, there's the Calm app, there's a whole bunch of them. Most of them offer free services. And if you just download it into your phone, you click on it, you pick a meditation, you put your headphones in, you lay wherever you're most comfortable, and you just listen. Start off 5 minutes 3 times a day and try to increase that every day until you're getting up to like 15 or 20 minutes. I mean, we all get the time right now. And if you're struggling with things like sleeping and just being able to get through your day without feeling awful, you got to give your nervous system a break. And that's what meditation does. And by the way, there's also really good guided meditations, a lot of really great ones on YouTube, and those are completely free as well. Most of them have music in the background and a really soothing voice talking you through it. But I'm really encouraging people to give this a try. So when we talk about anxiety, what is it? What is anxiety, right? That's always the question that we ask. We've kind of got to a place, I think, where in society we look at anxiety as if it's something abnormal. And the reality is that anxiety is just fear. And as humans, we're wired to have this. If we didn't have a little bit of anxiety and we weren't afraid of being able to pay our mortgage, none of us would get out of bed in the morning. I know I wouldn't. I'd just sit on my couch all day and watch Netflix, right? So anxiety is actually necessary in order to motivate us to do the things that we need to do throughout the day. Now, there are times where, of course, it gets to abnormal levels. But let's just remember that anxiety itself is normal. It's a normal human emotion that is a necessary part of our survival, right? So now when we talk about abnormal levels of anxiety, right? Again, it's still a normal process. So when we think about back when we were cavemen, and the reasons why we have anxiety to begin with, right? The fear response, it's to keep us alive. And when we were cavemen, we weren't so much worried about coronavirus, right? Or my boss being angry with me, or the test that I have to take for students, or those kinds of things, right? Those kinds of things are more perceived threats. They're not, it's not a lion sitting in your living room with you about to eat you. But when we were cavemen, it was actually lions. So the human body developed this mechanism to survive the attack by a lion. So if you're walking through the woods and you come up and there's a lion right there in front of you, right? Your nervous system kicks in that fight or flight response that you hear about so much, and it causes a lot of changes in your body. And what those changes are help us survive. So it's that adrenaline rush that we talk about. It makes you super strong. Your respiration increases, right? Because you want to get oxygen to the blood, and then the heart rate increases to pump that oxygen to the muscles so the muscles can be as strong as possible. Your eyesight changes. You want to be able to see very acutely, especially if you have to run from the lion, right? The other thing that I think a lot of people are surprised to hear when it comes to this is that the stomach wants to empty. And this is because if you have to run or you have to fight, your body does not want to be heavy. It wants to be as light as possible because that's going to give you the best chance of surviving this attack. So it's going to get rid of the food one way or another, right? So oftentimes people have stomach problems when they're anxious. The other thing that happens is the brain shuts down. So the middle of the brain is where all of our survival tactics live. And that is not directly in communication with the part of our brain, which is the cortex, the outer part, which keeps us, which is where we do all our critical thinking, right? So your brain actually shuts that off because it doesn't want to take time to think about the lion. It just wants to act. So it goes into this middle part of the brain, which is just telling you to run or to fight, right? So you're not able to actually think. So when we put this all together, it makes sense, right? If we're being attacked by a lion, it makes total sense. It's giving us the best chance of survival. Does it work if we're sitting in our living room watching the news about the coronavirus? No. It actually does the opposite. All those things start happening and we feel like we're about to have a heart attack. We can't think, we feel sick, right? And we don't know what's happening. And oftentimes people will end up calling 911 because if it goes long enough, you'll have a panic attack. So what we have to do when you feel that is happening, we have to remind ourselves that we're safe. Right now, I'm in my living room. There's no immediate threat. It's a perceived threat, but not an immediate threat. So you have to remind yourself of your safety. Okay, I'm okay right now. There's nothing here that's going to hurt me. I used to have a client that actually bought herself a lion keychain. And whenever she felt that coming on, those feelings, she would hold the lion keychain. It would remind her that she's safe and there's no lion in the room with her. It was very helpful for her. So just another bit of advice. But being aware of what's going on in your body and why can actually be helpful, because what happens is people start to then become anxious about the anxiety, and it becomes sort of an ongoing cycle. So I have another question from Tanya. I'm struggling with the anxiety of worrying about my loved one relapsing. How can I not be so worried? Yeah, that's a lot of people are struggling with that, especially when everybody's stressed out, and we know our loved ones who are in the early stages of recovery or not even long-term recovery, they're stressed out, and is this going to cause a relapse for them? We talked about this. This is a question that came up Tuesday on the another webinar that I did. I think this is a very common one in times like this. I think these are the times where we have to, we encourage our loved ones to say the Serenity Prayer in AA and NA and any 12-step meeting. And as family members, we have to remind ourselves of that as well. So when you find yourself sitting there worrying about something that's completely out of your control, taking a deep breath and saying, "Dear God, please give me the ability to accept the things I cannot change, to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference," right? Please, God, grant me the serenity. Because the reality is whether your loved one is or isn't going to relapse during this is nothing that you can control. And all you can do is control yourself. So checking in with them, just making sure that they're okay, letting them know that you love them and that you're here if they want to talk. Try not to ask too many questions because that might just stress them out. I know we want to know the answers, but that just gives us a false sense of control. So just being there for them, letting them know that you're struggling too. That's about the only thing that you can do. And other than that, back to what we were talking about before, is trying to manage your own anxiety, right? So back to the meditation. I just kind of explained to you where the anxiety comes from. So there's only two sides of your nervous system that can be working, one or the other. It's like a light switch. It's either on or it's off. The anxiety is on. When you're at rest and not anxious, it's off. So what we want to do is shut it off. And meditation is a way to do that. It shuts it off. Okay. It takes that panic attack, that whole fight or flight that we were just talking about, and it just literally can turn it off. In meditation, when you get good at it, right, you're actually giving your body a chance to quiet, which is really going to help you emotionally. So if you can start to practice it, and in a time like this, it's not going to be accessible to people that haven't used it before. I mean, it's accessible, but not easily accessible. You're going to feel your mind wander. I often liken it to teaching a dog how to walk on a leash, where, you have to keep pulling them back and reminding them what they're trying to learn. And you'll have to do the same thing for yourself. You're going to feel your mind start to wander, and you have to pull it back, just like pulling the dog back on the leash. And you have to be kind to yourself right now. And remember that right now you're kind of trying to teach a dog to walk on the leash at a dog park, right? It's going to be a lot harder because your anxiety is heightened. But don't give up. Just keep trying. Like I said, we got plenty of time right now. So those of you that have the extra time to do it, just keep trying, keep practicing. I think I have another question from Rob. I've dealt with it for a few years, meaning anxiety, since my mom passed. Recently, I lost my job, have another sick loved one, and it seems like this madness is the cliff pusher. It's like impending doom all day. My only slight relief has been a low-dose beta blocker. Been clean 5 years, thanks to Chris. Don't want to get on meds. Okay, Rob, well, good for you for 5 years. That's great. Great news. Congratulations. That's hard work. And this is a tough time. It's definitely going to be a tough time for all of us. It sounds like you've struggled quite a bit. You got to tap into, I mean, hopefully you've done some AA or NA. Hopefully you're tying into a lot of the meetings that are happening. We have one that's going 7 nights a week at 7:30 p.m. It's all on Zoom like this. Go and get as much support as you can. It's incredibly important for all of us at this time, especially people who are in recovery. I think the Serenity Prayer is another thing that you can kind of go back to, is just accepting the things that we can't change, right? Knowing what we have control over and what we don't, and trying to work your program, right? Trying to get connected trying to make sure that you are reaching out to your supports, especially when that urge to drink comes, that you have people that you can reach out to and just, get the support that you need that can help you stay on track. And I'm sorry to hear that you're struggling, but definitely try to utilize some techniques of meditation. And there's other ones. There's all kinds of different types of meditation. If you Google them, you're going to get a whole list of things. Meditation, mindfulness, they're both kind of good techniques to use and to Google. I got another one from Andrew. I'm struggling to stay motivated during this. I just feel like I want to sleep and isolate. Yeah, so that's the opposite side of the coin, right? We've got the depression, and then we have the anxiety. So we've been focusing on anxiety. But now to talk a little bit about the depression, it's your whole life is upside down. And those of us that have a tendency to go more towards the sad side, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to get out of bed. So again, I think trying to remind ourselves of the positives when we're thinking about the virus, remind ourselves of the 90% instead of the 10%, right? Also trying to get a schedule for yourself. I know it's so hard right now, but if you could just force yourself to set your alarm, try to get up by like 8 or 9 a.m. Don't sleep any later. It's going to be really hard in the beginning. But getting outside, you guys, it's so important to get sunlight. When we're just sitting inside all day long, it's going to make us feel awful. Vitamin D is a very important thing when it comes to our mental health. And vitamin D is made by our bodies through sunlight. So get yourself outside, get yourself moving, take a walk. There's nothing saying we can't go to the woods and take a nice brisk walk, right? Getting these meditations in, making sure that we're eating well. It's another one. So when we talk about that fight or flight that I talked about in the beginning, when that's kicked on, one of the other things that happens is your immune system gets shut down. It actually shuts it down because it doesn't want to have to worry about it. It doesn't want to use the extra energy to worry about keeping you well from viruses and bacteria while you're trying to survive a lion attack. So it takes that energy and it puts it towards the fight. So you want to shut that down, right? And you want to give that immune system the best chance it can to fight this virus if you are to get sick. And getting plenty of sleep, which I know, Andrew, it doesn't seem to be a problem for you, but making sure that you do try to go to bed at a decent time every night, right? I'm trying to get myself in bed by 10:30 every night, trying to get myself up by 7, 8 o'clock, right? I'm trying to eat as much good food as I can, not just sitting on the couch and eating chips, because that's not going to give your immune system the best fight that it can. Getting outside, again, is an important one, especially for you, Andrew. Getting out and moving your body. That endorphin rush that you get when you move your body is your natural antidepressant. It's your natural anti-anxiety. It's medication that our body makes for us. And if we're not utilizing that, right, then we don't get the benefits. So get out there and move your body. Don't just sit on the couch. Push yourself a little bit. And I know it's hard, but you gotta push. You gotta push through it. Even if it's just 10 minutes. Don't tell yourself you have to go for a 2-hour walk. Just get out there and walk around the block once. And then go and sit for a little while and then get up and do it again. Right? So sleeping well, eating well, making sure you're moving your body, trying to meditate to keep that fight or flight response down. All of those things are going to A, improve your mental health, and B, improve your physical health, both of which we need right now. So we have another one from Tanya. I'm struggling with the anxiety of worrying about my loved one relapsing. Oh, how can I not be so worried? We already covered that one. Any other questions, you guys? It's been good, really good questions so far. See, I do. I have some more. One from Lisa. I have found that starting every day, regardless of how hard it is with a workout, my daughter and I have found lots of online workouts, meditations, and yoga. My 21-year-old son is in recovery far away from home, and I worry about him and wish I could be with him in this. Exercising and have a plan every day has been so helpful. Thank you, Lisa. Yep, that's very true. Is trying to get up, trying to move, forcing yourself to get out of bed. There are a lot of online workouts right now. Yoga is another thing that's excellent. And there are most of our cable platforms right now, whatever we use for our television, have some that we can either live stream or have some on-demand things available for workouts and for yoga. So definitely utilizing those things, and write it down. So Andrew, if you're struggling with, having structure for yourself, write it down. And in the beginning, don't overwhelm yourself by structuring your day from like 9 to 7 at night. Just start with just 4 hours. Just give yourself a 4-hour window that you're structuring and try to increase from there. I also have one from Sharon. Can a loved one have depression and anxiety? I am a friend of mine's person, their go-to person, okay, and sometimes it seems like all they want to do is sleep right now, but then other times he will stay up all night long watching the TV to see what is happening. How can I support him? It's a good question, Sharon, and yeah, I mean, anybody can suffer from depression and anxiety, and I think most of us are right now, so please know that those of you that are struggling with this, you're not alone, because most of us are struggling with some mental health dips or mental health issues at this point. And no matter what your loved ones are going through, whether it's addiction, whether it's depression, whether it's anxiety, the first thing we have to acknowledge is that it's totally out of our control. So being very aware that whatever they're going through is theirs to fix and not ours to fix, right? There's a lot of us that feel very deeply for the people that we love, and we want to protect them and we want to help them. And sometimes we end up working a lot harder than they are to better themselves. So if you feel yourself stepping into that, step out and tell them as much as you can that you love them. You can tell them what you're seeing regarding the behaviors, that, hey, you just don't seem to be happy. Your schedule is all off. Are you okay? But you got to let them direct you in terms of what they need from you. Try not to overdo it, and just let them know you're there. And when they're ready, they'll reach out, but try not to force it too much. I know it can be really hard, especially those of us that have a tendency to try to control situations. I know I struggle with that sometimes, so I don't know if that's that's where you are, Sharon, but I have a tendency to do that, and I have to stop myself. And these are good opportunities to meditate. When you feel yourself, like, a couple of Lisa and Tanya, who are talking about loved ones who are in recovery, when you feel yourself trying to step in and fix things and force things and control things, trying to use those meditations that we talked about, getting yourself into that to sort of give your mind a break and settle it down, and remember that their journey is theirs and that we can't fix it. And same thing, Sharon, with depression and anxiety. We can't control other people's choices. All we can do is support them and love them and try to be honest with them about what we're seeing. Let's see. I got one from Angel. I struggle trying to sleep. It seems as soon as my head hits the pillow, the world's problems seem to become mine and my thoughts race. Yes. Yep, that's anxiety. So anxiety, oftentimes it's a feeling, right? Anxiety is fear. It's a feeling that we feel in our bodies. And we often say things like, I can't help what I feel. And that's true. We can't control what we feel. But we can never have a feeling without first having a thought. Okay, so this is where it gets a little bit more tricky, right? So the reason why you're anxious, Angel, is because your mind is going. You're having all these worry thoughts, and they're probably happening throughout the day as well. You're just not recognizing them, because oftentimes the thought happens so quickly that we're not even aware that it's there, and we feel it first. So we got to start to isolate the thoughts a little bit. So Angel, if you can start to figure out what you're thinking about at night and start to challenge those things a little bit, it can be helpful. Like, for instance, I can't control this virus. The chances of, the chances are good that I and my loved ones will survive it. So those sorts of things. So to challenge them a little bit. Now, I don't really think it's usually not super helpful to do that at night when you're trying to fall asleep. So what I suggest is you try to do a little bit of that during the day. Try to isolate what you're worried about and challenge the thoughts a little bit and bring them more into a real place. Because I don't know if you guys have noticed this. When I'm perseverating on something at 2 a.m., oftentimes the reality of it is a lot more skewed than at 2 p.m., right? So trying to find some reality in it during the day and challenge them then. Now at night, what I want you to do or try to do is to shut everything down an hour before you're going to bed. Okay, you got to come up with a sleep routine. So no TV, no social media, grab a good book, a magazine, something that you can do to keep to get through that hour, to get your head out of the feelings of anxiety. Okay. And then what you're going to do is you're good, like 20 minutes, 15 or 20 minutes before you go to bed, I want you to do a meditation. Okay, just lay there, shut all the lights off, do a guided meditation from YouTube or something like that, and just try to shut that nervous system down. Now, if you find yourself having trouble falling asleep still, I want you to get back to when you were a kid, okay? Try to remember what it was like to fantasize, to have all those fantasy worlds. What I have a tendency to do is plan my dream vacation when that happens to me. So I pick a place, like, because in these fantasies, there's no holds barred. Remember when you were a kid and you would fantasize and like crazy things could happen in those fantasies that it didn't have to be attached to reality, and then we forget that as adults and everything is attached to reality all the time. So I want you to have a no holds barred fantasy where you lay down at night and you can just let your mind think of wherever you want to go, whoever you want to be with. It can be the most amazing vacation ever. It doesn't have to be a vacation, whatever it is for you, but find something that you want. Maybe it's the perfect job. Maybe it's the perfect mate, whatever. And just let your mind think about that. And what that has a tendency to do is shut that fight or flight down, turns off the light switch, and all of a sudden you'll wake up. And if you wake up 2 hours later because your anxiety level has been high all day and you're still having trouble staying asleep, try the fantasy again. Okay? And try to keep building on it. I know it seems a little funny, but I'm telling you it works. Most people, once they start to practice it, will all of a sudden wake up and be like, oh my God, I didn't even know I fell asleep. And it works that way for me sometimes, because I definitely have to do this too. Anybody have any other questions? So I want to get back to and just talk a little bit more about the thought behavior pyramid. Oh, I'm sorry. I do have another question from Rob that I missed. I always heard about sugars and caffeine being a trigger for anxiety. I turned 40 Monday. Happy birthday, Rob. And the first 39 have been what I want when I want. With the heavy anxiety, is there things I should steer clear from? Yeah. So when you're talking about sugar and caffeine in particular, so sugar actually causes, I mean, we know this, right? It causes us to become hyper. So the other thing that sugar does is it really feeds, like when you think about our immune system, it almost can disable it. Okay, sugar is definitely something right now we want to steer away from if we can. And caffeine, in terms of anxiety, you know how you feel when you have too many cups of coffee. You feel anxious, right? It bumps up your anxiety. It gives us energy. It turns on the fight and flight for a lot of us. So I wouldn't have a cup of caffeine after 3 p.m. if you're struggling with sleeping. And if you're struggling with anxiety, try to cut down on coffee. I actually gave up caffeine 11 years ago because it wasn't good for my health. And since then, I don't have the dips that I used to have, because what happens with things like caffeine and sugar is they give us added energy, but once it's gone, we actually end up lower than we were before. So, and nicotine is one of these as well, where it will give you energy. And if this is where you were, it's going to bring you up to here, and then it's going to bring you back down to here. So then you're going to want more, right? And this is how it goes. So if you can get yourself off of that wheel, that hamster wheel, you're going to feel much better. And yes, your anxiety will feel lower, because those drugs are stimulants. And when we think about a stimulant, it stimulates our nervous system. That's why it's called a stimulant. And fight or flight is a stimulated nervous system. So those drugs that's what they're doing. And they are drugs. Not illegal drugs, but they are drugs. They do cause a change in our body. Anything else, you guys? Any other questions? Okay, so let's talk about these thoughts again. That's where I was going before, is since you can't ever have a feeling without first having a thought. If you're feeling super anxious or super depressed, okay, depression is typically when our thoughts are in the past. So we're thinking a lot about what we should have done, what we wish we did, or the fact that we don't like ourselves very much based on past choices. That's typically when we're having those kinds of thoughts. Typically, that's when our mood starts to become depressed. That's when the self-hatred starts to seep in, and we start to not want to get out of bed. Anxiety is when our thoughts tend to go towards the future. So what's going to happen with this virus? Am I going to survive? Is the world ever going to be the same? Is the world ending? What's going to happen tomorrow? Right? So if you want to gauge why you are feeling what you're feeling, I want you to try to pay attention to where your mind is most of the day. Is it in the future or is it in the past? Because typically speaking, you're going to figure out that there's a connection between your thoughts and your feelings when it comes to that. So what we need to try to do, and I know you've probably heard a lot about this, but we need to try to stay grounded in today, because there's only one place that I can control, and that's what's going on in my life right now. And if I'm spending every single day worried about things I can't change, or worried about things I can't control in the future, then I'm ruining the time that I could potentially enjoy today, especially if I'm okay right now. So trying to remind yourself that right now, maybe your loved one is in recovery and he or she is sober right now. I want you to focus more on that than what has happened or what might happen. Okay? If everyone in your family is well right now, I want you to be grateful that you're all well right now, not what could happen tomorrow. Right? Not I have asthma or I'm high risk or any of those things, because all that's going to do is spike your anxiety and lower your immunity. Right? So I want you to try to stay grounded in today. And how do we do that? Meditation, walks in the woods. It's a great way to stay grounded, going for a long walk and just trying to notice the leaves and the trees, the water if you're near water. Like, what does it smell like? Trying to be grounded in your senses and just noticing what's going on. What does the sky look like? Right? Those sorts of things. If you have a dog, what's my dog doing? I wish we could be more like dogs, because that's what they do. They live in the moment every day, right? All they want is a little bit of attention and they're happy, right? They're not worried about the virus, or they're not hating themselves for something they did yesterday. Right? That's the mentality that we want to adopt, because we will be way more healthy if we can do that. And the worry that I have today over what could happen tomorrow is actually not going to help me manage tomorrow, even if it does happen. Right? And when I look back on my life, the things I've worried about, maybe 5% of them have actually happened. 95% of the things that I've worried about have never happened, right? That's like a lot of wasted energy. And oftentimes, probably maybe a cold or something has come out of that, right? Because I lowered my immunity. So it's not productive. It's not a productive use of our time at all. So, I often talk to people about doing things like setting worry dates. So giving yourself permission not to be worried right now. My area, the virus isn't too bad right now. So I'm not going to worry until there hits a certain amount of people have the virus, and I'm just going to isolate until then, right? Things like that can be very helpful. Or if it is in your area, there's nothing I can do to control whether or not I get it. So I'm going to choose right now not to worry, because I want to feel good, right? And if, and if you're have a tendency more to go towards the depression, trying to ask yourself questions like, why am I so upset with myself? Right? Like, why do I hate myself so much? And trying to challenge it, because oftentimes we see people or know people who have done exactly the same things or made a lot of the same choices that we have, and we don't judge them to the same extent we judge ourselves. So we have to be able to give ourselves the same love and compassion and forgiveness that we give other people. And you got to ask yourself, I'm so mad at myself for X, Y, or Z, but should I be? Or what is it going to take for me to forgive myself? Because we all deserve to be happy, and we all have made mistakes, and we got to learn and work towards forgiving, right? So anybody have any other questions on anything that I've covered today, or anything you're struggling with? Oh, okay. Got one from Sharon. You've talked about having sessions 7 nights a week at 7 p.m. Is this available for everyone to get online to participate in? My person is also recovering from substance misuse, but I think him talking to others would help him. It's basically a 12-step type meeting. We can't, unless it's an actual AA meeting, you don't call it AA, but it is a recovery meeting for people who are in recovery or have abused substances. He's welcome to check it out if he has substance misuse in the past. He can always see if it's a place for him. All the information on it is up on our website. It's all over our social media, and absolutely, he's welcome to participate. Kevin just actually posted it in the chat box, so you can find the link there. So we have been kicking around the idea of potentially doing a non-recovery based support group for just all of us that are struggling with anxiety and depression. I'd love to hear if any of you think that that's a good idea or would be interested in joining. So if you would love some feedback on that, maybe one day a week, and it would be more of an interactive meeting than this. So if anybody has any ideas on that, let me know. You can email me, Kristin@theherrenproject.org. Kevin just posted that as well. Just give me some feedback on what you'd like to see. We're really trying to figure out how we can better support just the community as a whole, whether you're a family member or somebody in recovery or you're neither. Trying to offer something for you guys to come to try to help you through this. The isolation part's hard for a lot of us. I think I saw a meme out there that said something like, introverts, please put down your books and check on your extrovert friends. We're really struggling right now. So those of us that charge our batteries from being with people are going to struggle right now. And if you're struggling, it's okay. Just get out there and try and find the things that you can do to connect. It's going to be via video, but it's better than nothing. I know a lot of my friends and I are using like, they have the Facebook Messenger that you can do chats on. There's obviously FaceTime on the phones. There's the Zoom app and Zoom that you can get for free to talk to friends and family. So try to reach out to your support system and don't just sit at home, like feeling badly. Try to reach out and have some discussions. Lisa says she would love to have an online support group. She attends a weekly local meeting and she misses it very much. Okay, Lisa, awesome. So sounds like that's one thumbs up for potentially doing something. So anyhow, reach out to me if you have any other questions. If you have anything right now, shoot it out. And we're here for you guys, and we're going to continue to try to do things to keep everybody connected. And thanks for joining today. Oh, hold on. I got a question from Rob. Is there a certain amount of time that goes by that your anxiety has been raging when you should maybe seek more help or something like Zoloft as a last resort? Always had anxiety, but seems like this time is too long. Rob, medication is always an option. I think that reaching out for help from the mental health community, whether it's medication or therapy or both, is always a good idea. Right now, a lot of therapists are doing telehealth. I'm actually doing it. And so you can still see a therapist. So I would highly recommend making an appointment with somebody and doing a little bit of work, and deciding with them whether or not medication is a good option for you, and then seeking maybe a psychiatrist's opinion as well. That's what we're here for as mental health professionals. We're here to help you guys, help you figure out what your best options are. And medication is awesome, and it can definitely help people feel better, but it's typically not going to fix it. It's just going to bring you up a little bit. So kind of what we were talking about earlier with figuring out your thoughts and trying to figure out how to change them. It's called cognitive behavioral therapy, and that is very helpful as well. So oftentimes medication paired with some sort of psychotherapy can give people the best results possible. So I would definitely seek help. I don't think there's any shame in it. I think the stronger of us are the ones that end up reaching out for help. There's no sense in feeling awful all the time when there are services out there that can help you feel better. I know when I have strep throat, I go to a doctor and the doctor helps me get better. So why, if my mental health isn't good, why wouldn't I reach out to the mental health professionals and have them help me feel better? It's definitely a good option. Rob says, thank you, Kristin and Kevin. Chris has been important in my life. Tell him I love him and thank you. We will, Rob. Thank you so much. He'll be happy to hear that. Anybody else have anything? Okay, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And like I said, keep in touch, watch our social media, email me if you have any other questions, and hopefully you'll see more of these sorts of things happening. And please stay